With the San Francisco 49ers falling in convincing fashion, are the Baltimore Ravens now the best team in the NFL? Ho, ho, ho. It's a Merry Christmas here on today's episode of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome into another episode of Locked On NFL. And clearly, I am in the holiday spirit, as is our good friend Luke Braun here at Luke Braun NFL.
What's up, everybody? Crying over here. Why did you say ho ho ho?
I felt like it, man. It's Christmas. You know what I'm saying? So it is Christmas. You're hearing this Christmas Day. We're recording, of course, Christmas evening after a triple header over on Monday Night Football here for today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We appreciate you being an everydayer here with us on the show as we break down the biggest stories from around the National Football League. And when it comes to these Tuesdays, Luke Braun and Ross Jackson, we keep it interesting. We have a ton of fun here as your NFL experts here on the Locked On Podcast Network. On today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at a new era in the NFL. The MVP race gets a big-time shakeup. We're going to take a look at the Baltimore Ravens. Are they the best team in the NFL now as well? In today's episode of Locked On NFL, brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the promo code Locked On NFL for $20 off of your first order. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So, Luke, it was a big win for the Baltimore Ravens, and in convincing fashion, they knock off the guy that, I mean, if folks listen to the holiday special, Mike Renner just called the number one team in the NFL from over at Renner Ranks, the San Francisco 49ers. In convincing fashion, they fall to the Baltimore Ravens. Are the Baltimore Ravens now the team to beat in the NFL?
There is, I think that was the two best teams in the NFL.
Yeah,
I have been saying all year that the 49ers are the best team in the NFL. Don't talk to me about how Brock Purdy is just a game manager or whatever. So is Tom Brady. All right. Game manager isn't a bad thing.
Shout out
Cam Newton cooked, by the way. Cam Newton cooked. So I still believe in the 49ers. I am a little worried about Trent Williams. He goes down in this game. As of this recording, we don't know the severity of that, so that's something to keep an eye on. But yeah, it's like, now, how do you argue against the Ravens after they go against that team in their own house and dunk on them? That was a dunk. That was Lamar Jackson prime time putting on a show and honestly playing with his food against a very, very, very good team. I legit would not be surprised to see these two teams both retain the 1 seeds in their respective conferences and meet again in Las Vegas in February. I'm not off the 49ers at all. They're injured and I get it. They're going to They still have kind of the driver's seat to a bye week, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of the NFC standings. That'll help with those injuries, depending on the severity of some of them. But it's really hard to argue with Lamar Jackson when he finally has a little bit of a supporting cast, just a little bit of one. Zay Flowers and whatever's left of Odell Beckham and, Rashad Bateman and all that. It's just enough. Doesn't even have Mark Andrews anymore. Plus a little bit of an O-line, right? Not having to carry the ship entirely by himself, giving him just a little bit, and then suddenly the dude can just run around and cook. And when he plays the way that he played on Christmas night, indefensible. Just you cannot. There's just some stuff that, as a defensive coordinator, you just have to go, well, that's just going to happen to us.
Yeah, it's one of those deals to where, like, you see one of those players and then you go, okay, well, you can't stop that player, so you just do your best to mitigate or limit their impact. And this was a big thing. I mean, like, when the Ravens brought in new offensive coordinator Todd Monken this offseason, this is what we expected to see from them. And this is what we expected to see for Lamar Jackson: weapons, a passing game, and his ability to run. In this game, completed 65% of his passes, threw for 2 touchdowns and 252 yards, added another 45 yards rushing, including some big clutch runs late in the game in the second half as well. The Ravens defense absolutely cooked. 4 sacks in this game, 5 interceptions, including the game-sealing interception against a San Francisco 49ers quarterback Sam Darnold, because Brock Purdy was out of the game, had exited the game with a stinger, went to the injury tent, was still on the sideline. I believe he still had his helmet in his hand. Couldn't really tell in the broadcast view, but they continued with Sam Darnold. I think that was a wise decision in this game, because the 49ers still found their way into good position and good territory to be able to maybe score before the 2-minute warning, turn it into a 1-score game. But that Ravens defense, for all the talk we could do about Lamar Jackson, that Ravens defense was outstanding in this game. And on that interception with Marcus Williams in the back, or kind of sealing the game, his first interception of the season, Brandon Ayuk on the outside one-on-one in that situation. The Ravens trusted the guys that they had, and it worked out great. I mean, that defense balled out this evening. And I think if you're looking for the things you want from the best teams in the NFL, and I'm right there with you, Luke. For me, it's Baltimore and San Francisco. San Francisco is not out of that conversation for me at all, but it starts with the defense, and then it continues with the quarterback. And I think both these teams check both boxes without a doubt.
There is something I should mention about the 49ers. There's a curse that has afflicted them back in October. No team in NFL history has ever lost to Kirk Cousins and then gone on to win the Super Bowl. Guess what the 49ers did this year? The curse is on them. Wow. It's over. The playoff upset is coming.
Curse.
No team has ever lost to Kirk Cousins and then gone on to win the Super Bowl.
Wow. Who'd have thought Kirk Cousins was the key to the NFL championship?
Kingmakers. He is the kingmaker.
That's absolutely.
Or the king slayer.
Yeah,
the Jamie Lannister vibe. Like, I'm thinking about the AFC, right? Because if you look at the NFC, all of these teams are falling apart. If we're trying to figure out who's the best team in the NFL, right?
Right.
Well, the 49ers just crapped on the lawn on Christmas. The Eagles kind of did too. They got a 3-game winning streak. They barely scraped by the Giants, who are benching quarterbacks. It's hard to say it's them right now, right? They're in a really rough spot. The Cowboys just lost to Miami. They probably are going to have to play on the road a whole bunch again. They've had, their ups and downs. I still believe in them more, but it's just hard when you're going to have to be the 5th seed, right? You're going to have to go on the road probably for the entire playoffs. That's a really difficult thing to accomplish. Hey, something the Buccaneers did, right? Look at Detroit, maybe. Like, I look at the NFC and I look at the AFC, and I think the best team in the league has to be either the Ravens or the Dolphins, who proved quite a bit in beating the Cowboys, who are a good team. Yeah. It has to be those two. Like, it feels like we can just fast forward to Ravens, Dolphins in the AFC Championship, but I feel like I also said that last time with the Chiefs and Bills. Last year with the Chiefs and Bills, and then the Bengals came in and ruined all of that. And you play the games for a reason. And I think about, this is what a great opportunity for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens to undo their reputation for blowing it in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because they were this good in 2019. And that was Lamar Jackson. He won MVP that year. They were that team. They got bounced by a feisty Titans team. And if you hit that sort of Fugazi, well-coached kind of team, I think of like the Steelers now. Like, they aren't good, but they're so well-coached that they're going to always be in the game in some way, good defense, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And I think about, not to mention, a division rival, so they know you well, and it's hard to beat somebody 3 times especially, I believe the Ravens still have a Steelers game coming up, right? Or am I wrong about that?
I'll have to look at what the remainder of their schedule is, which I want to look at anyway.
Yeah, look that up, because I look at that and I think, that's the kind of team that beat the Ravens last time, that was able to kind of come up with it. What do they have left? Yeah,
they've got the Dolphins next, and then the Steelers to close out the season. So it's going to be,
Baltimore, barn burner.
Yeah, they get opportunities to really cook here or get exposed, right? Like, you're not going to have any question marks about the Baltimore Ravens going into the playoffs at this point.
For sure. And I think the only question is who gets the 1 seed, and that might come down to that Ravens-Dolphins game. And that might mean, that gives one of those teams an advantage if they do meet again in the playoffs. And that could be what it comes down to. So there's a lot at stake there, whether or not you think one team is better. But the other thing is, this is a week-to-week league. And there are times when the Ravens have totally fallen apart too. So I caution anybody from doing the Mike Florio thing where you just get super caught up in whatever is happening right now. It's like, 49ers are winning the Super Bowl, right? Like, we heard that last week when they dunked on someone.
Yep.
And now we're saying, wow, are they even like a good playoff team? Like, let's not get too wrapped up in
right.
things.
Yeah. Like, of course, like both of these teams are excellent 100%, but both of them have their vulnerabilities, and it's going to be really interesting to see which ones of them are able to either correct or at least curb those vulnerabilities going into the playoffs. Luke, you mentioned Lamar Jackson and his 2019 MVP campaign. Well, there's a chance that he ends up coming back around to that conversation here in 2023. The first player this year that we shouted out to be the potential MVP at the end of the season just knocked off the guy who was the front runner head to head. How did that impact the MVP race? We're going to be taking a look at that with our friends over at FanDuel here in just a sec as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by FanDuel, as are these MVP odds. After this game, as I'm looking at it live, Lamar Jackson minus 180 to be MVP, followed by San Francisco 49er, not Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey at plus 450 is the second place in the FanDuel odds. Brock Purdy falls all the way down to plus 1900 after getting benched. If you want to get in on that action or anything else, you can head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon. And right now you can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. So if you want to go and just catch the biggest favorite of the week, whoever you want, whether they're minus 800 or not, you still would get $150 back in bonus bets with a $5 money line bet, assuming that team wins. That's 30-1 odds that you can get on a heavy favorite. You're not going to find odds like that anywhere else. Just head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon. You can find not only money lines and MVP odds, but spreads, over-unders, all of that classic stuff, and a bunch of crazy parlays with their parlay building tool, because I know y'all like to get absolutely crazy with those. Once again, that is FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
All right, everybody, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On NFL. Appreciate you being an everydayer, making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to go and check out that Locked On Sports Today 24/7 national sports stream, the first ever in existence on YouTube. So head over to Locked On Sports Today YouTube page, subscribe, and check it all out. Be a part of history. On today's episode of Locked On NFL, we're breaking down Baltimore Ravens with a big win over the San Francisco 49ers. Not only does that end up creating the conversation around who the best team in the NFL is, at least for right now, but as Luke said, it's a week-to-week league, so we know that we're going to see a big-time kind of shakeup when it comes to MVP odds with this game, and that is absolutely what has taken place. Luke, you just shared the odds from our friends over at FanDuel, but let's go ahead and refresh a little bit. Baltimore Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson now number one in FanDuel's MVP odds, and Brock Purdy falls quite a bit after a 4-interception game to that Baltimore Ravens defense.
Who would ever throw 4 interceptions in a game? I've never seen that before. Certainly haven't seen that 3 times in the last 3 weeks across the NFL. No. Can we stop doing this? But yeah, it's a bleak moment, right? As the case for Brock Purdy as MVP, I think, was more statistical than logical. It was look at these numbers. Nobody's ever had numbers like this and not won MVP, and you got to do it. And I think that's a little bit short-sighted. I think that's it's a little reductive, because it's not the most statistically prolific player. It's the most valuable player, right?
Right.
And everybody understands that what Brock Purdy means to the 49ers is not the same thing as what, say, Lamar Jackson means to the Ravens, right? Mm-hmm. The offense of the 49ers is built around Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Trent Williams, even. That offense is built around, your offense is built around your best player, right?
Yeah.
The Vikings offense is built around Justin Jefferson. The Saints offense is built around sadness. It is built around whoever your superstar is. And for the Ravens, that is Lamar Jackson. And I think if you aren't the answer to that question, it's really hard for me to buy into you as MVP, even if you pick up a lot of stats.
Great point.
That said, that there's no shame in that for Purdy. And I think people need to understand that about the 49ers, that he's doing what the 49ers need to do to win games.
Yep.
You can do that all day long. There is something that is going to win you awards when you rush for 30 yards on a cool scramble, in the third quarter of a game where you're dunking on the best team in the league. That's going to get you MVPs. 4-yard crossers on 3rd and 2 to Deebo Samuel is not necessarily going to get you an MVP, but guess what? it's still going to win you a lot of games. And the 49ers have won a lot of games with Brock Purdy. So if you're a 49ers fan and you're upset about all this, let it go. It's fine. Brock Purdy can still be who you want to be. The question is, did he actually get benched here? Right. 49ers will never admit that, but was it all right, 4 interceptions, you're out. You got a stinger, that's a good enough excuse, you're out. Yeah. That would be the question here. But like what Purdy is doing, and if you think you can put Sam Darnold in and get exactly the same production, awesome. Fantastic. Right. Great job, Kyle Shanahan. 49ers fans should be thrilled with the fact that they built a foolproof offense.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Like that there is excitement in the MVP conversation, but when you're rooting for your favorite team, what you're rooting for is your favorite team. And if that player, whether MVP or not, can help your favorite team win games and put your favorite team in position to win games, there's still a lot to be excited about. Like you're going to hear a lot over the course of this week about, did the San Francisco 49ers get exposed? Are they not who we thought they were? Blah, 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 blah. No, they're still one of the best teams in the NFL. They just ran head-to-head against one of the other best teams in the NFL, and that's fine. And I don't think that MVP race should change the way that San Francisco 49ers feel about their team and about their quarterback. I always tend to play and it can be reductive as well. It can be a little bit of a slippery slope, so you have to keep things in context. But oftentimes with the MVP conversation, I often play how will X play if they're playing with Y's team, right? So I think about like if Brock Purdy and Lamar Jackson swap places, I don't know if, you know what I mean? I don't know that Brock Purdy is as effective, but I think Lamar Jackson can be as effective with the added mobility that he brings as a runner. And so
you put that in the universe. I just felt a disturbance in the force.
I know. It's crazy. It's
good gravy. Well, that's kind of what they wanted with Trey Lance.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking about, right? Like that's the whole thing. This is a whole like millennial divide by zero situation right here. And so where I'm like swapping people on teams that have no business playing at each other's systems and things like that. Right. And systems matter so much. Like in a sense, Lamar Jackson's a system quarterback, right? Like it's not a bad thing
for sure
to be the guy that the system is built around, right? Like that's kind of the point. That's what's supposed to happen.
That's good. You should be a guy that your team wants to tailor everything to making him the most as valuable as he possibly can be. And if you take Lamar Jackson out of the Raiders or out of the Ravens, that's why Tyler Huntley is the backup, right? Like that's why that was their guy for so long, is because he was one of the only guys that can still execute that role. You cannot have Sam Darnold be the backup quarterback of the Ravens. You know what I mean?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But yes, that's exactly it. So like the way that I look at it, like Lamar Jackson was the first guy that we highlighted on this show and said, hey, he's playing at an MVP level. Then he kind of like cooled off a little bit. We talked a little bit about Jalen Hurts. He cooled off a little bit, talked a little bit about Dak Prescott. And then now we're back to Lamar Jackson. And in December, I had a player tell me not too long ago in one of the locker room sessions that like December is the time to be remembered, right? December is when you're remembered. And this is absolutely that time for Lamar Jackson. If Lamar Jackson, especially with the Miami Dolphins coming up next week, and then a big divisional game to close out the season against the Pittsburgh Steelers, these are real opportunities for him to further solidify his sort of reign as MVP. And of course, solidify, more importantly, just like we were talking about with Brock Purdy, more importantly, help to solidify the Baltimore Ravens as the best team in the conference and potentially in conversation for the best team in the NFL, along with the Miami Dolphins, along with the San Francisco 49ers, along with the Dallas Cowboys when that defense shows up and all those things. Like these teams are going to trade off. They're going to move around. They're going to shift a bit, things like that. But no doubt right now in my mind that Lamar Jackson should be and is, according to our friends over at FanDuel, the MVP frontrunner. And right now he deserves that. Let's see if he can hang on to it, because the MVP race this year has been up and down. Yeah. And all over the place.
I have one wrench to possibly throw in this, because I think if you voted right now, it's Lamar Jackson and it's not close. Yeah. Let me give you a scenario. Ravens beat the Dolphins. Ravens get the 1 seed. Next week, Dolphins play Buffalo Bills. Buffalo Bills win that game as well, and they also win Week 17. Buffalo Bills win the AFC East, and Josh Allen shows out in those 2 games. Does Josh Allen steal this?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the thing, right? It's going to be like who shows up hottest at the last point. Let's say that a part of the Ravens winning against the Miami Dolphins in sealing that 1 seed is that Lamar Jackson doesn't play Week 18 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah. And so Josh Allen goes off for that additional week. how does that end up having an impact? So do you give the leverage to the guy who led his team to an early number one seed clinching performance, or do you give the nod to the guy that had the most impressive, and by most impressive I mean number of impressive performances by the end of the year? Let's just say I'm happy I don't have to vote for MVP.
Yeah, I would still slam Lamar Jackson, but I could see sports writers not doing that.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Like, surely, like someone's always going to vote for Troy. You know what I mean? Like, something's going to happen like that. So we'll see how it goes. All right, coming up next, we're going to wrap it up with our yike and our like, including a new era in the NFL. We got that coming up for you as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is a great place to get last-minute tickets, flash deals, and zone deals. Think about it. Have you ever just spontaneously decided you want to go to an NFL game or an NBA game or an MLB game or a concert or a comedy show or whatever, and then suddenly you log on, you try to find those tickets, and they're just marked up to heck because it's that night? Gametime is there to help you navigate that crazy jungle of finding last-minute tickets. They can do their zone deal where you pick the section and Gametime picks the seats. You can get an average of 18% savings when you do that. And if you find the same section and same row for less somewhere else, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. That is the Gametime guarantee. Download the Gametime app today and you can use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. That is the Gametime app. Just search it out in whatever app store you have and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase.
All right, everybody, wrapping up today's episode of Locked On NFL with our yike and our like. We do this every Tuesday, Luke and I. Our yike, the one thing we didn't like from the week. Our like, the thing that we did like for the week. And Luke, if you don't mind, I'm going to start us off with this one because my yike and like are kind of immediately intertwined with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And so my like is that we're in a new era of the NFL. And my yike that comes as a part of that is that the reason why we're in a new era of the NFL is because of how badly the Kansas City Chiefs have seemingly fallen off over the course of this season. It's been a rough season for Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Don't get it twisted. Patrick Mahomes still one of the best players in the NFL. And once they figure out how to get him wide receivers that know how to catch passes, he's going to be right back where he belongs at the top of the NFL next year, more than likely, along with Andy Reid, assuming Andy Reid is back. There's always that. Andy Reid's one of those guys that always gets the retirement conversation at the end of every year.
Yeah,
he gets that surprise retirement one. Always gets that combo. And so, but even though the Kansas City Chiefs have fallen off, and it genuinely kind of sucks to see the way that they've fallen off. They're still a good team, right? But it is kind of cool to see teams like the Baltimore Ravens, the Miami Dolphins, the San Francisco 49ers, the Philadelphia Eagles, like all of these teams that have kind of risen to be the cream of the crop. And I like the parity. I like the kind of change of pace that we're getting this season, as opposed to yet another easy to project Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl. Could they still get there? 100%. Could they still win it? 100%. But that's not what we're projecting at this moment. And to me, that's exciting. I like seeing two new jerseys in the Super Bowl every year. If we get the
you don't want to see like rematch on rematch. It's we both grew up in the world of it was like the Patriots every other year.
Yep.
It's nice to see some variety.
Yeah. And I think that's a big reason why I enjoy it for sure, is that like that Patriots dynasty was so dominant. You just knew every year you were going in and you were saying, okay, who is it in the NFC is what you were usually asking, because you knew who you just knew who was going to be in the AFC. And we weren't always
who the other team in the AFC Championship was, because the Patriots participated in like 18 of 20 of them or something like that.
Yeah. And so, they didn't always make it there, but that was always the sort of expectation. And it was starting to kind of get that way with the Kansas City Chiefs. And understandably so, and rightfully so, because, look at the success that they've had in Patrick Mahomes' still young career so far. So it's kind of neat to think that, all right, we might not actually see a red jersey at all in this Super Bowl matchup. We might not see the Kansas City Chiefs. So there would be some new Super Bowl champion, some new Super Bowl winning head coach and all that to be able to kind of usher in sort of this new era of the NFL. No Patriots, maybe no Kansas City Chiefs, and then we'll see what happens over in the NFC. But it should be an interesting Super Bowl matchup, and to me, that's exciting when we can't project it like where we are right now.
Yeah, it makes the whole playoffs interesting, right? Like you look at the AFC and the possible matchups, and every single possible thing is interesting. Even going to, the Browns and the Steelers, who are teams we don't see as on the same level as, the Ravens or the Dolphins. But like, I don't know, they've pulled off some weird upsets. Like,
yeah, man,
weird stuff could happen. Like, the Chiefs could lose in the first round, and then suddenly everything is topsy-turvy, right?
Yeah,
I love
the
that.
guys over at Locked On Chiefs said the other day, it was Chris Clark and Ryan Tracy, they were talking about it, and they were saying, look, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a one-and-done team, the Kansas City Chiefs. And so if that happens, like, who moves on from there? Because sometimes it's about just getting hot at the right moment. So even those teams like the Cleveland Browns, like the Pittsburgh Steelers, what happens if they surge at the right time, right? Like, it makes things very, very, very interesting as we look ahead to the playoffs here.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was your like and your yike?
Effectively, yeah, they're kind of both together. Okay. I'll give interim head coach Coach Pierce a shout out, and Antonio Pierce a shout out as well over with the Las Vegas Raiders for knocking off the Kansas City Chiefs, scoring 20 points and be able to come away with the victory there. I mean, they've been awesome. So I'll give that like a little extra like, but really I just like where the NFL's headed right now.
Yeah, keeping their playoff hopes technically alive.
Yeah.
So my like is going to go to where I'm going to put both of mine in the NFC here. My like goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who put one on the Jacksonville Jaguars
big time
at home at Raymond James Stadium, and they now are in the driver's seat to the NFC South. Now, I believe both of their last games are against NFC South opponents.
Correct.
And one is against the Saints, one against the Panthers, right? So, if they can take care of business in both of those games, which I assume they will be favored in, they'll go win back-to-back NFC South titles. And I just appreciate the Bucs for giving us something watchable out of that division. The Saints, I'm sorry, Ross, I love you. Dude. The Saints are like peeling your fingernails off watching that offense. The Falcons are just remain the funniest team in existence, and they have suffered. We talked about it with Lauren on Locked On NFL last Tuesday. The Falcons have suffered some indignities that just feel like the kind of thing that you need a whole season to shake off. Losing to the Vikings and Josh Dobbs, who didn't know anything. It reminded me a lot of the Raiders losing to Baker Mayfield when he showed up to the Rams on a short week. And the Carolina Panthers don't exist. Thank goodness the Buccaneers have given us a team that we're all going to sit down and watch on Wild Card Weekend and not go, this team will never win. Like, they might think it'd be an upset. They probably won't be favored in that game, but at least we can sit down and watch that game and feel like it's 0-0 and anything can happen. And not to mention Baker Mayfield, who the Buccaneers are actually interested in extending, it sounds like. At least rumor has it that those parties are interested in talking about an extension. He feels like he's having his Geno Smith moment where he was counted out. He was in the ranks of backup quarterback. Geno spent a lot more time in those ranks backing up Russell Wilson, but it feels like Baker Mayfield has found his way into maybe a more steady job after going from the Browns to the Panthers to the Rams and all of this stuff, bouncing around the entire league, finally finding a home in Tampa Bay. And maybe getting something to work. And, is this a Super Bowl contending team? I don't think they're that complete. And I don't trust Baker Mayfield nearly that much. But can they show up in the playoffs and ruin somebody's party? Yeah, I think they can maybe get weird about it, depending on who they play, right?
Yeah.
And my yike goes to a team I do not feel that way about. And, our tradition here on Locked On NFL Tuesdays, we got to pour one out for some teams that we think are done-zo. Pour one. I thought you were going to pour water directly on your
that would have been
mixing board.
Like I have to go.
It would have been an appropriate self-inflicted wound to match the theme of the Minnesota Vikings. They are donezo. My Vikings are stupid, dumb, and they are going to be watching the playoffs from the couch. I'm done with them. Here's the deal. They have lost 4 of 5. They have had 2 different quarterbacks throw 4 interceptions, and neither of them got benched in their game where they threw 4 interceptions, but Josh Dobbs did get benched in the next one. So we're all looking, maybe they start the Storm and Mormon, Jaron Hall.
Hey, he's back.
That is where we are at. They are 2 injured. TJ Hawkinson has a knee injury that is not only going to end his season, but depending on how MRI results went on Christmas, they will be that might jeopardize his 2024 as well.
Yeah.
Justin Jefferson now goes into contract negotiations. We got to figure out what to do with Kirk Cousins. The offseason is going to be a really tricky one to navigate. But this team is, I mean, they're looking and saying, well, we got 2 NFC North games and, division teams. Let's go beat them and let's go make our play. They're not going to do it. They don't have any talent left. They have a sprained ankle on Jordan Addison. They've got Josh Oliver and Johnny. They're throwing fades to Johnny Munt. They've got Nick Mullins throwing interceptions to everybody. They lead the league in turnovers. They have outgained their opponents in 4 of their 8 losses, and they tied in the total yardage battle in a 5th one. This is not a serious team. This is a team that if they could kind of, stop making stupid mistakes and avoid, the catastrophic disaster plays, could actually go toe-to-toe with anyone. But they cannot satisfy that condition. I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. I don't trust them for the other 2 games. Screw the playoffs. I don't know if they win another game. I'm thinking, man, are they 7-10 and drafting 10th? That feels like a more likely outcome with this garbage team. Get out of here, Vikings. You're donezo. We're pouring one out. I don't want to see you again, and I definitely don't want to put you in front of the nation again. It's embarrassing. Please let us die in silence.
I have the feeling we're going to be able to copy and paste that same rant for the New Orleans Saints for next week after they lose to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Buccaneers seal up the NFC South, and the New Orleans Saints are sent walking home like a sad Arrested Development meme. Those are all the things that I expect.
That is the offense of the New Orleans Saints, is that just Michael Cera sadly walking and then eventually just sort of laying down limply.
That is exactly right. That is exactly right. Well, y'all, it has been a fantastic and fun episode here on the Locked On NFL podcast. We appreciate you very much for joining us and for making us a part of your day here as your first listen. For Luke Braun at Luke Braun NFL, I am Ross Jackson at Ross Jackson Nola on your favorite social media. We'll be back with you here tomorrow. You're going to have Chris and James breaking down the biggest stories, biggest questions around the NFL, as well as power rankings and all of that good stuff. We appreciate you very much. Hope that you had a wonderful and safe Christmas and continue to have happy holidays here from the Locked On NFL podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.